Did you know that Canada quietly initiated a boycott of the United States, and somehow the whole world joined in? What was initially a modest response to fresh tariffs soon snowballed into something no one anticipated. Supermarket aisles, once populated with American goods, now stand bare. Trips to New York and Florida, scrapped. Even European coffee houses are substituting Coca-Cola with domestically produced apple juice. Initially, people mocked. Canada could not possibly damage the U.S. economy, they whispered. But then something unexpected occurred. From coast to coast, in British Columbia, food stores started stamping Canadian flags boldly on fruits. Consumers began shunning U.S. brands completely. Travel bookings to America fell through the floor, down by over 70%. And overnight, the world took notice. If Canada had resisted, perhaps others might too. And that's what happened. Mexico, Denmark, France, Spain, and India, 6 nations, each with their own agenda, but all working together as one movement. From China substituting American beef for imports from Australia, to European programmers building apps that enable consumers to steer clear of U.S. brands altogether. The change was catching fire. This wasn't about politics. This was about everyday people in supermarket aisles, restaurants, and airports, making choices that cascaded through the world economy. If you believe this is all about soda or a sack of oranges, think twice. We're talking billions of dollars in lost trade, crashing tourism, and even U.S. allies rejecting American defense contracts. This is larger than any tariff battle. It's a movement that remade the global marketplace. And today, we're dissecting just how this Canadian boycott went from being a mere protest to a global phenomenon. But first, don't forget to like and subscribe, because this tale is too huge to ignore. Number 1. Canada. Our tale starts with America's next-door neighbor, and one of its biggest trading partners. When President Trump imposed tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, Ottawa might have taken the traditional diplomatic path, but Canadians acted in a different way by weaponizing shopping carts. Rather than threats or penalties, they let their purses do the talking. Households started reading labels in supermarket aisles. If an item was made in the U.S., many just put it back. Canadian grocery stores embraced the trend, applying bright red maple leaf stickers to homegrown products with pride. Products previously imported from the U.S. were replaced with others from Canada, Europe, or South America. And it didn't end at the dinner plate. American automobiles sat idle in lots. Vacations to Disney World and New York lost their luster, as Canadians opted for staycations in Canada or elsewhere. Flights from Canada to the United States plummeted, according to reports, down 70% at the height of tourist season. But this wasn't economic alone. For Canadians, it was also about pride. Patronizing locals was about standing up to what they perceived as unequal treatment. That pride became the tinder, and word got around loudly and clearly. If Canada could stand up to America's hegemony, then perhaps the rest of the world could stand up to others. Number 2, Mexico. If Canada was the one that threw the match, Mexico was the one that doused the flames with gasoline. For decades, Mexico was one of America's largest export markets and a key connection in North America's supply chain. But when President Trump imposed tough tariffs, threatened to construct a wall, and incessantly mocked Mexican leaders, regular citizens vowed they'd had enough. What they did was easy but effective. Don't buy American. A walk through stores in Mexico City or Guadalajara made the change evident. Shelves that previously held American apples and yams were now loaded with fruits and vegetables from Chile, Ecuador, or Italy. In certain stores, American products nearly vanished, stealthily replaced by products from South America, Europe, or local lands. This was not a noisy protest. No marches, no large slogans. It was an unobtrusive revolution, tens of millions of families making small, everyday decisions to choose something different. And it wasn't only the supermarket shelves that noticed the difference. Tourism fell apart as well. Mexicans have traditionally been the United States' most frequent visitors, but numbers of travelers plummeted. Flights from Mexico to U.S. destinations alone fell 25% in the first quarter alone. Families that previously planned vacations in Los Angeles or Orlando opted for Cancun beaches, Puerto Vallarta, and Baja California instead. The cash remained in Mexico, and so did the message. If America didn't treat its southern neighbor with respect, Mexico wouldn't spend its pesos north. This was no longer politics. This was personal. Mexico demonstrated that even a country heavily invested in the economy of the U.S. could act otherwise. And once it had, the world started paying attention. Number 3, Denmark. If Mexico's rebuff was all about dignity on the border, Denmark's started with one of the most bizarre diplomatic moments in recent history. In 2019, President Trump offered that the United States should purchase Greenland, a huge island owned by the Kingdom of Denmark that has more than 50,000 inhabitants. What could have been sold as a shrewd business proposition came across as a naked affront to Danish sovereignty. Denmark's prime minister had called the notion absurd. But to many Danes, it wasn't absurd. It was disrespectful, and the backlash wasn't just furious headlines. It seeped quietly into daily life. Grocery stores throughout Denmark started brazenly labeling products with Made in Europe stickers, encouraging consumers to steer clear of American imports. Citizens began boycotting American products, be it packaged food, clothing tags, or simple items that had once been so strongly desirable. There was no melodrama, no shouting. There were no loud demonstrations in the streets. Rather, it was quietly and wonderfully powerful, customers making everyday decisions that gradually diluted America's grip on Danish markets. Even the simple act of opting for a locally made Danish cheese instead of an American import became an exercise of quiet defiance. For Denmark, the Greenland controversy was not simply about commerce. It was about pride, honor, and self-determination. A smaller country had managed to resist Washington, not by threatening or using force, but by consumer power. And in the process, Denmark joined a worldwide movement, redefining commerce and pushing back against U.S. hegemony, one shopping cart at a time. Number 4, France. Denmark's boycott may have been quiet, but France's was brazen, vociferous, and impossible to miss. Initiated by President Emmanuel Macron, the French government directly attacked America's tariffs as brutal and unjustified. But the most powerful response came not from politicians, but from regular French people. If Washington desired a trade war, the French would wage it in their own fashion, by slamming shut their wallets on U.S. brands. One of the most symbolic acts occurred at the grassroots level. In many towns, Coca-Cola, the ultimate American cultural icon, was prohibited from festivals and public events. In its stead, locally produced apple juice. For many French citizens, this wasn't merely about drinks. It was about pride, autonomy, and standing up to foreign pressure. The boycott picked up speed in the world of social media. Social media campaigns urged consumers to leave U.S. products behind and adopt European counterparts. What to avoid and what to purchase instead, lists took social media by storm, targeting companies such as Tesla, McDonald's, Amazon, and Apple. And it succeeded. Polls showed that 6 out of 10 French citizens favored boycotting American products. Tourism also became a weapon. Many French travelers vowed to avoid the U.S. altogether while Trump was in power. The result? A sharp drop in French visitors to America, cutting into one of the United States' most valuable streams of international tourism. For France, this boycott was something greater than an economic protest. It was cultural. It was about standing up for unfair treatment while demonstrating that a proud nation could hold its head high by standing behind its own. Number 5. Spain. Spain might not always be on top of the world's news like France or Canada, but its contribution to the boycott was just as important. And it all started with one simple message: buy local. Why purchase American oranges, lettuce, or salad kits when Spain produces its own world-renowned fruits and vegetables in states such as Andalusia and Valencia? That query went from Spanish households to stores to social media. Before long, supermarkets changed. American convenience foods that used to stock shelves were replaced by Spanish and European versions. And as with France, the movement was particularly vibrant online. Activists and ordinary citizens posted lists of boycotts, calling on people to shun American brands while highlighting local alternatives. Buy local hashtags caught on, particularly among young Spaniards eager to make every trip to the shops a gesture of defiance. But in Spain, the boycott had an added taste: pride of culture. Spaniards are deeply proud of their food and farm tradition. Declining U.S. imports was not only a protest, it was a celebration of national heritage. Restaurants made local ingredients front and center as never before, converting dinner tables into acts of quiet resistance. Spain's boycott may have seemed small compared to larger economies, but it spoke volumes. Even small countries could redefine international trade. One orange, one salad, one dinner at a time. Spain demonstrated how small actions can add up to a global phenomenon. Number 6. India. India joining the boycott movement could be the strongest of all, just due to its size and economic influence. With more than 1 billion people, India is among the world's fastest-growing consumer markets. Indian business was the golden prize for years for U.S. firms. Fast food chains, technology giants, and retail brands flocked in, competing against each other to get a stake in the booming market. But all this changed overnight when President Trump introduced 50% tariffs on Indian products. Indian leaders and business persons, instead of surrendering, galvanized the country. Prime Minister Narendra Modi supporters fueled campaigns calling for citizens to boycott American items. And this time, it wasn't the politicians or elites who were pushing this. It was the common folk. Overnight, U.S. household brands were on the receiving end of criticism. Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Amazon, and Apple, brands that were previously associated with aspiration, were repositioned as beacons of foreign exploitation. The irony was poignant. India, a nation with more Domino's pizza stores than anywhere else on the planet, was now rallying its citizens to boycott it. For many Indians, the boycott went far deeper than tariffs. It was about pride, self-reliance, and asserting independence on the global stage. Buying local brands became an act of patriotism. Choosing secondhand clothing or rejecting U.S. electronics became small but powerful symbols of resistance. India's involvement was proof of one thing: this was no longer a local protest. The boycott had turned international, from North America to Europe to Asia's largest democracy. And once India was on board, the size of the movement was irrefutable. From Canada's igniting spark to India's colossal pushback, 6 countries made everyday shopping decisions into a global movement. What was the consequence? Billions lost in trade, devastating tourism, and allies openly challenging U.S. hegemony. America's economic dominance is no longer secure, and the world is paying close attention. So, what are your thoughts? Does this boycott signal the start of America's downfall, or is it merely a short-lived uprising? Leave your comments below. And if you enjoyed this analysis opener, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because this tale is only expanding.